achieved. Can I please get a round of applause for Mrs. Irving?
Only got 2 minutes.
Next, we have student Trevor Flagg.
Okay.
I have picked Mr. Hendricks as my most inspirational teacher. Coach Hendricks is a great guy and is always saying it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. In fact, this quote is posted all over the place out in the weight room so that his students can see it each and every day. This is one of the reasons I chose him. To many of you, I'm sure you probably think this is a scary looking dude who coaches football and race, and you'd probably be right. But more so, Mr. Hendricks is a nice and caring teacher who has inspired me to do my best in school and outside of school as well. Being that as I played football, I got the amazing opportunity to meet Mr. Hendricks long before most of the other students. Instantly, I knew he was a very impactful man. Little did I know he would be my biggest inspiration. I spent many long days with him, 2 classes in a row in the morning, then practice, and some evenings we'd even go fishing afterward. All the while, he mainly talked about one thing, and that was my grades. One thing he did was come up with the idea to award players helmet stickers for getting an A on a test or quiz. And I'm sure he probably still owes me a few. After that, many of us started study groups after practice in order to get better grades. After every single practice, he'd remind everyone to rest up for school the next day because that was the most important thing for us. Some of the most beneficial conversations I've had with him were during my teacher aid hour. He didn't have a class, so it was just the 2 of us out in his office. Every day, the first thing he'd ask me was how school was going. Sometimes I'd tell him how I didn't do too hot on a test, and he would get on to me to get back after it, constantly reminding me how important my schooling was. He's pushed me every day to do my best. Coach Hendricks is one of the nicest and most genuine people you could ever meet, and will go completely out of his way to help facilitate a student's needs. It didn't matter if we were out on the practice field, or in the school, the weight room, or out on our kayaks. He was always asking about me, and for that, I can't thank him enough. Without his involvement, I wouldn't be standing here today. Thank you.
Next, we have Colin Culpa.
I have had the privilege to call Mr. Phipps my band director for 7 years now. And after these many years, I've learned many things from him. And not just on my instruments. On top of that, he's given me hours of stuff to talk about. But I'll try and fit it down into my 2 minutes of time, so let's see how this goes. Among the many things that Mr. Phipps has done for me is show me how to be a leader. Mr. Phipps does not simply teach the art of music. He inspires those playing in his bands to be lifelong leaders, whether they end up playing an instrument or not. When I auditioned for drum major my freshman year, Mr. Phipps began to lead me down the path of leadership by showing me the ways that he has successfully implemented the skills necessary to be an effective and admired leader throughout his teaching career. His mentality of putting others' needs before his own is one that I have adopted and will keep with me long after I graduate this year. He taught me to take the needs of others and put them before my own, which I can partly attribute to our band's first appearance at Dismissed State Finals in 14 years last November. As one of the longest tenured band directors in Knox history, you would think Mr. Phipps is a results-focused guy, one who's constantly striving for a higher result and a trophy. This isn't exactly true. He does want his bands to get better, don't get me wrong, but he focuses on the group he leads, not the other groups around him. He would constantly tell us before every contest, the only group you have to beat this week is yourselves. And he's right. When we focus on trophies and scores and success, we don't focus on what we should be trying to achieve, a great show. This can apply to any aspect of my life as well, and any of you sitting here today. One of my favorite memories of Mr. Phipps happened in October of 2016, the day of ISMA Regionals at Lafayette Jefferson. Our band did not advance past the first round of competition, just narrowly missing out on a semi-state round. We were all crushed as we'd spent so many hours on the show and tried to perfect every little point along the course. We'd gone to contests across the area, and now a bunch of crusty old judges tell us, "Nice try, go home now." As our 3 buses full of sad high school kids slowly made their way to the parking lot where we'd spent all of our time the past few months, we stood at the corner of the parking lot, waving the flag that band parents bring with them to every contest, congratulating each and every one of us on what a great season it had been. He stood there, the only one in the parking lot, with 80 band kids, all there, and all of their parents looking on, and some would say making a fool of himself. The upperclassmen and myself were incredibly touched by this. It had been a tough season with lots of expectations and little results, but Mr. Phipps stuck through it all and showed he truly cares about every single one of the kids that he has the privilege to teach, and I have the privilege to call him my director. So as our paths continue over the next few weeks, years, and decades, whenever I think of Mr. Phipps, I'll think of the IndyCar debates and Indy 500s we got to go to and experience together, even though Elio Castroneves never won. I'll think of the look on his face after I led the last note of the last show I'd ever conduct for Knox, holding back tears. I'll think of him and myself tearing up at homecoming this fall, realizing my high school days were almost up. And I'll realize that Mr. Phipps taught me what Mr. Phipps taught me will indeed last my entire life. And for that, I think I'll have to come back and check in every now and then. Thank you, Mr. Phipps, for everything.
Next, we have Emily Eberhardt.
Phonetically, Matt, M-A-C.
I know.
And
I thought about it.
so they get it right for graduation. McEntee.
Hello and good evening. Welcome everyone to Knox High School's Academic Awards Ceremony. I'd first like to congratulate all of the students that are here tonight. I applaud each of you on all of your success so far this year. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate all of the teachers that have been chosen. All of your contributions have prepared us for the next stages of our educational journey. I have been a member of the Knox community for the past 6 years and have had the privilege to cross paths with many great educators who have enriched me academically. One of those teachers being Mrs. Stone. As a freshman about to start high school, I was a little nervous, kind of like right now. My sister, being a senior at the time, told me that there was nothing to worry about and mentioned some of her favorite courses and teachers. When school started, the first teacher I met was Mrs. Stone. Her approachability and authenticity allowed for an immediate connection. I believe that teachers with admirable qualities have the ability to engage students and ease the learning process. Students are more likely to reap the full benefits of a course when they value and are inspired by their teachers. After spending a great deal of time in her classroom, I could see that she genuinely cared about her students and her academic success in school. She encourages her students to be ambitious and undertake opportunities that will benefit our future. Her positive attitude projects itself onto myself and my peers. All of her hard work and dedication is shown through the success of her students. Her caring nature and enthusiasm for teaching is phenomenal. Because of this connection, I was drawn to Mrs. Stone and felt as if I could open up and interact on a deeper level in her classes. Although all of the courses I have taken will benefit me later in life, Mrs. Stone's course preparing for college and careers was eye-opening. This was one of the classes that opened my mind to what life would be like outside of high school. Her class was a glimpse of the future and gave me a better understanding of what being a responsible adult entails. Without Mrs. Stone's great advice and tips, and of course the help from my parents, I don't believe that I'd feel as confident as I do now about my transition from high school to college. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stone, for all of your hard work. You are truly an inspiration. I'll always remember your infectious laugh, and sassy spirit.
Our next student is Cassandra. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. All of the teachers here deserve credit for being most inspirational. But for me, Mr. Cron has stood out among the rest.
My needs. Can I please get a round of applause for Mrs. Irving?
Only got 2 minutes.
Next, we have student Trevor Flagg.
I have picked Mr. Hendricks as my most inspirational teacher. Coach Hendricks is a great guy and is always saying it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. In fact, this quote is posted all over the place out in the weight room so that his students can see it each and every day. This is one of the reasons I chose him. To many of you, I'm sure you probably think this is a scary looking dude who coaches football and baseball. And you'd probably be right. But more so, Mr. Hendricks is a nice and caring teacher who has inspired me to do my best in school and outside of school as well. Being that as I played football, I got the amazing opportunity to meet Mr. Hendricks long before most of the other students. Instantly, I knew he was a very impactful man. Little did I know he would be my biggest inspiration. I spent many long days with him, 2 classes in a row in the morning, then practice, and some evenings we'd even go fishing afterward. All the while, he mainly talked about one thing, and that was my grades. One thing he did was come up with the idea to award players helmet stickers for getting an A on a test or quiz. And I'm sure he probably still owes me a few. After that, many of us started study groups after practice in order to get better grades. After every single practice, he'd remind everyone to rest up for school the next day because that was the most important thing for us. Some of the most beneficial conversations I've had with him were during my teacher aid hour. He didn't have a class, so it was just the 2 of us out in his office. Every day, the first thing he'd ask me was how school was going. Sometimes I'd tell him how I didn't do too hot on a test, and he would get on to me to get back after it, constantly reminding me how important my schooling was. He's pushed me every day to do my best. Coach Hendricks is one of the nicest and most genuine people you could ever meet, and will go completely out of his way to help facilitate a student's needs. It didn't matter if we were out on the practice field, or in the school, the weight room, or out on our kayaks. He was always asking about me, and for that, I can't thank him enough. Without his involvement, I wouldn't be standing here today. Thank you.
Next, we have Colin Culpa.
I have had the privilege to call Mr. Phipps my band director for 7 years now. And after these many years, I've learned many things from him. And not just on my instruments. On top of that, he's given me hours of stuff to talk about. But I'll try and fit it down into my 2 minutes of time, so let's see how this goes. Among the many things that Mr. Phipps has done for me is show me how to be a leader. Mr. Phipps does not simply teach the art of music. He inspires those playing in his bands to be lifelong leaders, whether they end up playing an instrument or not. When I auditioned for drum major my freshman year, Mr. Phipps began to lead me down the path of leadership by showing me the ways that he has successfully implemented the skills necessary to be an effective and admired leader throughout his teaching career. His mentality of putting others' needs before his own is one that I have adopted and will keep with me long after I graduate this year. He taught me to take the needs of others and put them before my own, which I can partly attribute to our band's first appearance at Isthmus State Finals in 14 years last summer. As one of the longest tenured band directors in Knox history, you would think Mr. Phipps is a results-focused guy, one who's constantly striving for a higher result and a trophy. This isn't exactly true. He does want his bands to get better, don't get me wrong, but he focuses on the group he leads, not the other groups around him. He would constantly tell us before every contest, the only group you have to beat this week is yourselves. And he's right. When we focus on trophies and scores and success, we don't focus on what we should be trying to achieve, a great show. This can apply to any aspect of my life as well, and any of you sitting here today. One of my favorite memories of Mr. Phipps happened in October of 2016, the day of ISMA Regionals at Lafayette Jefferson. Our band did not advance past the first round of competition, just narrowly missing out on a semi-state run. We were all crushed as we spent so many hours on the show and tried to perfect every little point along the course. We've gone to contests across the area, and now a bunch of crusty old judges tell us, "Nice try, go home now." As our 3 buses full of sad high school kids slowly made their way to the parking lot where we'd spent all of our time the past few months, we stood at the corner of the parking lot, waving the flag that band parents bring with them to every contest, congratulating each and every one of us on what a great season it had been. He stood there, the only one in the parking lot, with 80 band kids, all there, and all of their parents looking on, and some would say making a fool of himself. The upperclassmen and myself were incredibly touched by this. It had been a tough season with lots of expectations and little results, but Mr. Phipps stuck through it all and showed he truly cares about every single one of the kids that he has the privilege to teach, and I have the privilege to call him my director. So as our paths continue over the next few weeks, years, and decades, whenever I think of Mr. Phipps, I'll think of the IndyCar debates and Indy 500s we got to go to and experience together, even though Elio Castroneves never won. I'll think of the look on his face after I led the last note of the last show I'd ever conduct for Knox, holding back tears. I'll think of him and myself tearing up at homecoming this fall, realizing my high school days were almost up. And I'll realize that Mr. Phipps taught me, what Mr. Phipps taught me will indeed last my entire life. And for that, I think I'll have to come back and check in every now and then. Thank you, Mr. Phipps, for everything.
Next, we have Emily Eberhardt.
Here's phonetically, Mac, M-A-C.
I know.
And
I thought about it.
so they get it right. Congratulations. McEntee.
Hello and good evening. Welcome everyone to Knox High School's Academic Awards Ceremony. I'd first like to congratulate all of the students that are here tonight. I applaud each of you on all of your success so far this year. Secondly, I'd like to congratulate all of the teachers that have been chosen. All of your contributions have prepared us for the next stages of our educational journey. I've been a member of the Knox community for the past 6 years and have had the privilege to cross paths with many great educators who have enriched me academically. One of those teachers being Mrs. Stone. As a freshman about to start high school, I was a little nervous, kind of like right now. My sister, being the senior at the time, told me that there was nothing to worry about and mentioned some of her favorite courses and teachers. When school started, the first teacher I met was Mrs. Stone. Her approachability and authenticity allowed for an immediate connection. I believe that teachers with admirable qualities have the ability to engage students and ease the learning process. Students are more likely to reap the full benefits of a course when they value and are inspired by their teachers. After spending a great deal of time in her classroom, I could see that she genuinely cared about her students and her academic success in school. She encourages her students to be ambitious and undertake opportunities that will benefit our future. Her positive attitude projects itself onto myself and my peers. All of her hard work and dedication is shown through the success of her students. Her caring nature and enthusiasm for teaching is phenomenal. Because of this connection, I was drawn to Mrs. Stone and felt as if I could open up and interact on a deeper level in her classes. Although all of the courses I have taken will benefit me later in life, Mrs. Stone's course preparing for college and careers was eye-opening. This was one of the classes that opened my mind to what life would be like outside of high school. Her class was a glimpse of the future and gave me a better understanding of what being a responsible adult entails. Without Mrs. Stone's great advice and tips, and of course the help from my parents, I don't believe that I feel as confident as I do now about my transition from high school to college. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stone, for all of your hard work. You are truly an inspiration. I'll always remember your infectious laugh and sassy spirit.
Our next student is Cassandra. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. All of the teachers here deserve credit for being most inspirational. But for me, Mr. Crom has stood out among the rest here, and I give him the credit for helping me develop a love of all of the sciences. His biology class is what made me want to take as many science courses as I could here, and ultimately decide my major in college. The summer of my sophomore year, I had the privilege to attend the National Student Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. to study forensic science for 9 days. But getting there was going to be a struggle. Mr. Crom helped me more than anyone with his strategies on gaining the financial resources. He helped me learn how to network with different organizations and with moral support along the way. I wouldn't have been able to go if it wasn't for his help and the trip where I decided that I wanted to study forensic science. Moving to more recent history, I took his wildlife class over the summer. I learned more about bugs, birds, and bison than I ever realized I could. We were learning the material in the classroom and applying it to the real world in places like Wolf Park and Turkey Run and the caves in southern Indiana. That class was one of the best classes I've ever taken. Not only did I learn about wildlife, but I learned about life as well. The biggest thing I learned from Mr. Crom is that if you find something you love, it isn't work. He would sometimes bring up stories about doing reptile population studies in New Mexico and doing waterfowl studies and surveys in Alaska. From those stories, the research didn't seem like a job. It was a passion. Freshman year, he helped me find my love of science. Helping me get to DC and allowing me to take his summer class opened me to 2 new avenues that I would never have dreamed of before: forensics and wildlife biology. All in all, I want to thank you for everything over the 4 years.
Our next student is Connor Ports.
You would have asked me 5 years ago, when I struggled to get even B's and C's, where I thought I'd be at this point in my life, I would have never thought that I would be standing here ranked in the top 10 of my class. But because of watching great role models like Mr. Selge, who embodies hard work and is extremely dedicated to his career as a teacher, I am standing here giving this speech. I can only hope to be half as committed as he is to his job. Mr. Selge made the most out of every day that I had him in class. Every day, he brought something new and exciting to the table, which was sometimes also hilarious. Whether it was him dressing up as a medieval peasant at school, his subtle jokes, or him yelling "King D" at the top of his lungs, there was never a dull moment when Mr. Selge was teaching. He wasn't just any normal teacher who would give us homework and then sit at their desk. Mr. Selge would act out what we were learning, and that's how he separated himself from most teachers in my mind. No matter what, he always came ready to teach each and every day. Although I know college is going to be extremely hard, I hope to make the best out of it like Mr. Selge does with his teaching. I have come a long way since middle school and even freshman year when I was ranked 17th at one point. I was a little discouraged after promising myself that I would be in the top 10 in high school after having a mediocre and unsatisfying middle school career. However, all those times staying up until 1 or 2 o'clock have finally paid off, as I have surpassed my goal of just being in the top 10. I am ecstatic to continue my academic career at Purdue, as I know my work isn't done quite yet. Although I know it's going to be extremely difficult, I know I will make it thanks to all the valuable lessons, skills, and habits that Mr. Selch has passed down to me through his teaching. He may be a history teacher, but he has also taught me countless life lessons that I will take with me in my path to success.
Our next student is Elizabeth McEntee.
Since this is a speech about my most inspirational teacher, I'd like to share some of the things Miss Matizak has taught me. First off, s'mores Pop-Tarts are the best Pop-Tarts. Never, and I mean never, say Star Wars is dumb while in earshot of Miss Matizak. Never ask if theme should only be one word. The candy drawer is in the... Actually, I probably shouldn't share that one. Oh, and yeah, someone can really eye roll that much in one day. But of course, that's not all Miss Matizak has taught me. Miss Matizak taught me that words have the ability to change your entire perspective of the world, whether that be through a story or through conversation. You see, when I walked into her classroom on the first day of school, I was not the same person that I am today. Through her, I learned that it is not only important to say what you think, but to also listen to what others think. I learned that compassion and kindness are always better than judgment. And I learned that life is hard sometimes, really hard. But the best way to get through it is with a smile and a good sense of humor. Don't get me wrong, Miss Matizak is a great English teacher. Scratch that. Amazing English teacher. But some of the most impactful lessons I learned from her had nothing to do with English at all, but rather life and friendship. Things you can't simply learn from reading a textbook. Robert M. Hutchins once said, "As a general rule, teachers teach more by what they are than by what they say," and Miss Matizak proves that to be true. Miss Matizak, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done for me. I hope this speech is able to show you at least a small portion of the everlasting gratitude that I will always have for you. It was an honor having you as my English teacher.
Our next student, Noah Pinger.
As you all know, or I hope you all know, I have selected Mr. Flora as my most inspirational teacher. At my first academic awards night, I saw the top 10 speaking about their most inspirational teachers, and I immediately thought of who I would pick. But I got stuck with Mr. Flora, so I might as well share some stories. Before I had Mr. Flora as a teacher, I was told by the upperclassmen that he was crazy. And after getting to know him over these 4 years, I can assure you he's much worse. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about that. What I can say is that Mr. Flora is one to always make a joke and have a good time, which has inspired me to keep a positive attitude and always try to smile. As a teacher, Mr. Flora was unpredictable, which I loved. Every day I stepped into class, there was only one thing I knew for sure, that he was going to start with what he calls the DQ. This stood for the daily question we have in class every day. But the real reason behind the name was in remembrance of our beloved Dairy Queen we had in town years ago. My favorite part of Mr. Flora's teaching was his kicking demos, or kicking these for short. This was where Mr. Flora demonstrated a particular topic in class. This varied from awesome chemical reactions like the classic vinegar and baking soda experiment to showing us what angular momentum was by spinning a bicycle wheel. The best part about kicking bees was that he sometimes needed an assistant, and he picked me a lot for it. He made every class a blast, no pun intended, and very intriguing, whether it was chemistry, AP Chem, or physics. Mr. Flora has not only been an inspiring and quite interesting teacher, but a great coach through these 4 years. For those that don't know, the first Monday after school ends, cross-country conditioning starts. This was scary for me my first year because I didn't even consider myself a freshman yet. However, after getting to see his excited face every morning, it made it a lot easier. His great sense of humor and determined attitude made practice fun, yet challenging enough that I always wanted to come back. During cross-country season, Mr. Flora, being Mr. Flora, liked to give everyone nicknames. Mine was Old Faithful, for the simple reason that I almost never missed a practice or meet. In total, I missed less than 15 meets and practices combined in all of my 4 years. Although Mr. Flora may think that I was just committed to cross-country, it was his great personality and fun workouts that always made me hate missing a meet or practice. When I think of ways Mr. Flora inspired me, one example always comes to mind. During my freshman year of cross-country, the teams were on a run. It was just a short 3-mile warm-up down to the park. During this, Mr. Flora saw a few boys cutting the run short. Infuriated, he made the whole team run hills. This was the worst workout ever. During our post-run stretching, Mr. Flora said something that I will always keep with me. He said, "I will not let others corrupt my morals, no matter what the cost." What he meant by this was he was going to kick off the best runners off the boys' team and throw away any chance of winning if it meant having an honest team. At that moment, I knew I wanted to be like a man like Mr. Flora was. That day, everyone learned one of the many important life lessons that he has taught. As you have heard, Mr. Flora has inspired me and taught me many more lessons than anyone I know. Over these 4 years, he has shaped me into what I believe to be the best person I could be, which he deserves all the thanks for. He has made my time here at Knox High School awesome, and I hope this speech truly shows how great he is, because I owe him more than he will ever know.
Did you see this?
Our next student is Dakota Janikowski.
When I first walked into Mr. Bushman's classroom as a sophomore, I'll admit I was a little nervous. The previous year I'd heard stories of all these upperclassmen disliking him and even dropping his class because of how difficult it was. But my fear was soon alleviated. His classes are tough, but his ability to break down a topic so that you can understand it makes you come to appreciate his teaching style. That combined with many long nights staring at equations is what has allowed me to excel in his classes. Now I know that for most people, math is one of their least favorite subjects, let alone calculus. Somehow Mr. Bushman convinced me to join his math team and thus making me one of the nerdiest things you can be, a mathlete. This meant coming in early and studying subjects that we hadn't yet covered in class. But his eagerness and genuine enthusiasm about going to the HNAC math competition made me think that was worth it. It was, by the way. It furthered my understanding of the subject at hand, and I believe has prepared me for what I will know be difficult math courses at Purdue. Besides math, Mr. Bushman makes a great couch philosopher. Often in the beginning of class, we'll ask him questions that aren't necessarily related to math, but are thought-provoking. Frequently, his answers are so rooted in logic that makes you rethink your own position. As you can imagine, some good quotes result from this, and I would like to share them with you. Out of context, of course. Who are you going to trust more, your math teacher or some punk with a hacky sack? I don't like sunny days. Honestly, who likes to squint? Today, I'm going to teach you about street credibility. And finally, some people got a good math teacher. You got me. And for that, I'm glad. I couldn't have asked for a better math teacher. Thank you for everything you taught me.
And our next student is Natalie Banks.
as I sat at this very same academic awards banquet, listening to the top 10 students give their speeches, I began to think about what teacher I would choose, provided I was able to keep my place in the top 10. It didn't take long. I knew immediately I would pick Senor K, but this meant that I would have to remain first so that I could pick him, as he was guaranteed to be chosen by someone else. I couldn't be happier to be giving this speech, but I was given a time limit, so this is just a fraction of the things I could have talked about. Every day, class begins with Senor welcoming us with his famous catchphrase, "Hola amigos, so good to see you today as always." And then the class erupts into screeches and other interesting noises as they excitedly respond with, "Hola, Senor." This burst of screeches always lasts for a good 30 seconds, sometimes longer, but it goes to show how much his students appreciate him and love being around him. Any student of Senor knows that he is the nicest and most helpful and thoughtful person you can meet. He is always doing what he can for his students and wants each one to be successful. Anytime I've ever had a question about a lesson or anything in class, Senor has always dropped whatever he was doing to help me, and he made sure I understood it before I left. With our test in Spanish 4, he takes the time to make personal videos for every single student to clearly explain what we did wrong and how we can fix those errors. I can vividly remember taking verb quizzes in Spanish 2 and 3, and Senor would say, "I'm waiting on flames to burst from your keyboard someday if you keep finishing in under 12 seconds. That didn't happen, but it made me excited and it pushed me to keep getting better. I can also remember when I had substitute teachers in a certain class as a sophomore, I would finish my work and Senor would let me go sit in his room to talk to him. He basically became my counselor and go-to person for advice, which is still true today, though I'm sure he probably gets tired of seeing me all the time. Even last year, when I was put into a class in which I attempted to learn to play guitar, Senor would let me store it in his room every day, despite the fact it took up so much of his space. As I was heading to that class every day, Senor would always say he was going to come watch me put on a concert, which I'm very thankful he did not. The first 2 years of Spanish class with Senor were awesome, but nothing beats taking on the challenges and stresses of Spanish 4. And it's not just because of the copious amounts of snacks, the fiestas, Scrabble days, and the field trips, though they do make up a good percentage of it. This year has been the most stressful year of my life, and I can honestly say that I wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for Senor. He has helped me more than anyone else with the entire process of college applications, recommendation letters, scholarships, and even making the decision on what school I would be going to. My parents can also agree that he has been a major help to them as well. He has taken so much time out of his already busy schedule, including spring break this year, to contact professors and deans at all the colleges I was looking at just to get more information for me. Even when I changed my school at least 10 times, he was never aggravated with me. Well, maybe he was, but he didn't show it. I came to him several times at the beginning of the year because I was worried that I would not get accepted into the schools I chose. He was always so encouraging when he would say, "Don't worry, Chica, you've got this. You have nothing to worry about." I came to his room one day asking about an email I received from Butler, which was the school I was the most worried about. I really didn't think I was going to get into their pharmacy program. After some further investigating, we found my acceptance letter hidden in another part of my email. We found out together that I had made it, and my parents didn't even know yet. I think we were both pretty ecstatic at that moment. Every week he would ask me how the whole college thing was going, and many times he would help me figure out how I was going to pay for it and ways I could get the prices down. He is always there for not only Spanish help and college help, but is always there for guidance anytime I need it, and he always has my back. After every email and conversation, he always says, "Let me know if you need anything else at all." He truly means this every time he says it, and it doesn't matter what it's about, he's there. When I finally told Senor I had decided on Butler, he told me he was so happy for me and so proud of me, and the little things like that mean as much to me as the major things he has done. Because of Senor, I have developed a love for the Spanish language that I never thought I would, and I'm happy to say I will be majoring in pharmacy on a medical Spanish track. I would not be doing this if I never had Senor as my Spanish teacher. I am so thankful for his unending support, encouragement, and thoughtfulness. Senor, gracias por todo. Siempre has sido mi maestro favorito y he disfrutado de tenerte desde hace 3 años. Me gustaría que pudieras enseñarme el español médico el año que viene, pero me mantendré en contacto. Tú eres el mejor maestro y consejero. Por cierto, yo compré parte de tu regalo hace 2 años en México.
Did you understand that?
Yeah, but she has a heavy Indian accent. I heard 3 years is
He's been a favorite teacher for the past 3 years. Thank you for
top